Shalom, friends. Welcome to this Shear. Today we're studying the teachings of the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and we're learning a very famous work that he wrote. And many people don't really learn this work, or perhaps they're unaware that the work exists, called the Maamar HaIkarim, the essay of main essential concepts in Judaism. It's a fascinating essay, and I'm going to just inform you a little bit about who the Ramchal was in a minute and a little bit more about this work. Just to introduce myself, I'm Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet. My website can be found on www.lovingkindness.co. If you have subscribed to my channel already, thank you very much. You're making a great difference. It's so exciting to see new members joining and increasing the YouTube views of my video. It makes such a difference to me. If you haven't joined yet, please do subscribe to my channel right away. And if you find that you're enjoying this video, which I hope that you will do, please do click on the like button, the thumbs up button, and say, yes, thank you very much. I appreciate this lesson of yours. And likewise, please do share the video with family and friends. I'm doing the best that I can to teach this material, and I'm hoping that it will reach other people as well. So if you're enjoying it, and especially so if you are enjoying it, please send it to your family and friends and allow me to have some exposure in the teachings that I'm involved in. Likewise, if you find that you're enjoying the shiur and you have something worthwhile to say, please do comment below, or alternatively, ask a question. You can always send me private questions as well, but below you're able to just comment and put any questions that you have. So the main things are to subscribe to the channel, to like the video, and to share the video with family and friends. Those are the most important things. And once you're subscribed, also click on the bell button to be notified of future shiurim. Okay, so let's talk about the Ramchal. Those of you who've looked at some of my videos before this will know that I did a series of shiurim. At this point in time, when I'm giving this shiur, that series is not complete, but it is available up until a certain point in time of the Ramchal's Mesillat Yesharim, the Path of the Just. And the Path of the Just is one of the most classic works in Torah and Judaism today, in the world of Musar, in the world of ethical rebuke, ethics, discipline, working on oneself, growth, etc. The Mesillat Yesharim, the path of the upright, deals with a path of how to succeed in growing correctly in life. Actually, what people don't know is that hidden behind this work are the keys to attaining Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. It all begins somewhere. And when one begins the book from the beginning, one learns the very basic principles involved in how to climb this ladder to reach this final level of divine inspiration, which according to the Talmud also leads one to being able to resurrect the dead. And this is amazing things that we will only appreciate really once we get to this point, once we're able to grow and develop and understand what it is that the Ramchal is teaching us. Anyway, so that is just one of the books that he wrote. One of the other books that he wrote was the famous Derech Hashem. And in fact, this Maamar HaIkarim that we're going to learn is really a synopsis of the Derech Hashem. That's what's so fascinating about it. It's almost like you could ignore the Derech Hashem, so to speak, read the Maamar HaIkarim, and you'd have the whole basis of the Torah at your fingertips. Well, it's very exciting. We're going to see more about it in a minute. Now, the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, was born in Italy, and you'll see over there, as I mentioned, in the Mesillat Yesharim, I gave a small introduction into the work. I'm just going to go over a few points for those of you who haven't listened to it. Here are some main points about the life of the Ramchal. He was born in Italy in the year 1707, and he died in approximately 1747, some say 1746. I notice with a lot of these great men that the date often varies of a year or two. And when I introduce these videos, I often share both dates because I'm not quite sure which it is. Most important thing to know, of course, is he's the early 18th century. Now, the Ramchal was an outstanding Torah giant. And one of his teachers, in fact, was Rabbi Moshe Zakuto, or Zakut, the Ramaz, who himself was an outstanding Kabbalist. Well, if you have such a teacher who you can learn from, you are only destined for success and greatness in your life. And the Ramchal, of course, was a great person himself. And at a very young age, about the age of 14, it was said that he already knew all the main works of Torah off by heart. He knew the Talmud, he knew the Midrashim, and in fact, he even knew the main works of Kabbalah, the writings of the Arizal, the greatest, perhaps the greatest of the Mikubalim, of the great Kabbalists who lived within the last 500 years, excluding such individuals as, for example, the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero, etc. These were the greatest leaders of the time in the world of mysticism. And the Ramchal was really following within these footsteps of these great people. So let's imagine this great prodigy that at the age of 14 was completely fluent in all of these works. He was considered somewhat of a rebel because he was an experimenter. He was a person who didn't just take the Torah at face value. He didn't take mysticism at face value, but rather he engaged in the use of the mystical arts in order to attain various visions and whatnot. Well, whether he used these methods to attain the vision or whether the vision happens of its own accord, I'm not quite sure how it happened. But we do know that the Ramchal was visited by a malach, by an angel, who would teach the Ramchal the secrets of Torah. As a result, he made his presence quite known, and the rabbis were a little bit taken aback by this young prodigy, because let's not forget that this is shortly, only about 50 years after the period of the story of Shabtai Tzvi, who, of course, was the false Mashiach, who also went off in a false manner and a bad path. He took a bad direction and unfortunately began influencing the masses, saying that he was the Mashiach, he was the Messiah. And of course, at the end of his life, it was proved clearly that he was not the Mashiach, he was not the Messiah. So when the Ramchal came around just 50 years later, now 70 years later, or however you want to calculate these dates, when he came around with all of his insights and his knowledge of Torah, he almost came across like, almost, so to speak, like a messianic man, like a messianic figure. And when the rabbis saw this, they actually forbade him from teaching the teachings that he was involved in. And let's not forget, this is a very special person. This is a person who was completely immersed in Torah. He eventually formed a yeshiva, which was open 24 hours a day. People were studying in it 24 hours a day. It was said that the only structure of the yeshiva is that there had to always be somebody studying in the yeshiva at some point in time. So if there was a point in time that somebody needed to go and rest and there wasn't anybody there yet, he wasn't allowed to go yet, there always had to be somebody in the base midrash who was sitting and learning at that point in time. He was a real Torah scholar and he achieved greatness. And to this day, we are thankful for these wonderful teachings of the Ramchal, because he is certainly part of the Kabbalistic tradition of teachings of Torah. Those people who want to immerse themselves in the study of Kabbalah, for example, there are many directions to take. As we said, they're the teachings of the Ramak, they're the teachings of the Arizal, they're the teachings of the Ramchal, they're the teachings of the Vilna Gaon. And at this point in time, let me point out that it was said that the Vilna Gaon said that now the Vilna Gaon lived from 1720 to 1797. Let's put this into perspective. And the Ramchal lived from 1707 to 1746, 1747. So we see that there's an overlap over here. The Ramchal was approximately 13 years old when the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, Rabbi Eliyahu Kramer of Vilna, when he was born, the Ramchal was 13 years old. Then the Ramchal is growing up, and the Vilna Gaon is also growing up, of course, and the timing is just slightly off. So we can imagine that the Vilna Gaon at this point in time didn't know that the Ramchal was living. And of course, the Ramchal was, of course, in Italy, and the Vilna Gaon is in Lithuania. So there was no WhatsApp and Facebook. There was no ability to communicate with such speed so that people knew exactly who was where at what point in time and what the location in the world, etc. Things were different in those days. So the Vilna Gaon didn't know at this point in time that the Ramchal was living. And unfortunately, he heard too late. And so he made a statement, and when he got hold of the Ramchal's Mesillat Yesharim, he made a comment and said that he found in the first so many pages of the work, I forget exactly what the figure was, he said he never found that there was an extra word, not one extra word. He said, had the Ramchal been living at that point in time when he himself was living, right then when he was looking at this book, he said he would have walked all the way from Lithuania to Padua on foot. He would have walked by himself, on his feet. No horses, no donkeys, no cars, no means of transport, in order to sit and study Torah at the feet of the Ramchal. Now that's saying quite a lot, because those people who know just how great Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna can appreciate, if he made such a statement about the Ramchal, how great the Ramchal must have been. Well, the Ramchal was a giant, of course, and one of the things that he stands out for is his method of systemizing. He was so perfect in being able to systemize Torah that, as we will see, everything is perfectly written down in a particular order. Those of you who've looked at some of my other shiurim will be aware of other great people who also understood the concept of ordering and being able to systemize things. For example, if you take a look at the teachings of the Rambam, I have some shiurim up of the Rambam here, Rav Moshe ben Maimon, who codified the Jewish law for us into 14 works, and also the way that he did it was very systematic, absolutely perfect, every point in its place. If we take a look at somebody, you'll notice I have some teachings about Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi on the Tanya in my video list. And there again, you'll see here is a person who was completely fused in with the hidden Torah as well as the revealed Torah. And he compiled this work in mysticism in Tanya, and he compiled another work, which of course was his Shulchan Aruch, so to speak, an equivalent version of Rabbi Yosef Kairo's Shulchan Aruch. He wrote another Shulchan Aruch, so to speak, which was called the Shulchan Aruch Harav, which in today's times, anybody who wants to become a posek, you want to become an authority, whether or not you are a Chabad Chosid, makes absolutely no difference. Everybody needs to learn this work as well, because hidden inside this work are the keys to the code of Jewish law. So these are all people that understood the concept of systemization. So the Ramchal, as you said before, wrote numerous books, really 12, 20, 35, I don't know how many. He wrote many, many, many books. Not all of them are extant, and so therefore we don't have access to all the books that he wrote. However, such works as the Derech Hashem, we have access to, and this is certainly a great primer in the world of Kabbalah, in the world of mysticism. If you're interested in studying mystical Torah, the mystic side of Judaism, get yourself the Derech Hashem. I have some shiurim up already in one of the sections of Derech Hashem, and perhaps at a later stage I'll do more. At this point in time, there's only one of the sections available. Now, the Derech Hashem tells us all about everything that there is to know about Torah. And why I'm bringing that in at this point in time that's so important is to realize that the Maamar HaIkarim that we're going to study today, we're going to start it, is like a synopsis, and it really includes all these different points of the Derech Hashem. Okay, just to end off the basic details of the Ramchal's life, is that at the end of the day, because he was considered a rebel, so to speak, by these rabbis, they actually put him into an excommunication, and they didn't want him around. They didn't want him teaching his Torah any longer. Remember, I just said that the Vilna Gaon himself would have walked on foot to go and learn by the Ramchal. He knew the value of the Ramchal. Let us not think anything less than the greatness of what it was that the Vilna Gaon thought of the Ramchal. But in his day, where he was situated at that point in time, the rabbis considered him to be this false Mashiach on his way to influence the world for bad yet again, a great mystic man who it was known that the angel would appear to him and teach him Torah, and so on and so forth. So at this point in time, the rabbis of the generation told him that since they had put him into excommunication, they told him, you can't teach your Torah any longer. And as a result of all of this, the Ramchal actually fled from Italy, and he ended up in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, he became a lens grinder. He was grinding lenses and attending to whatever it was, perhaps similar to glasses or whatever it was that he was doing, etc. That was his work. And he would study Torah on the side as well, continue with his Torah studies. At a later stage, he eventually packed up his bags and he came to the land of Israel, and he died here in a plague together with his wife and his daughter. He left no descendants behind, and he himself was buried in Tiberias. One can go and visit the grave of the Ramchal in Tiberias in Tiberia, and there he's buried, in fact, directly opposite the place which is assumed to be the burial place of Rabbi Akiva. And that's interesting to note, because some say that the Ramchal, in essence, he had a spark of the soul of Rabbi Akiva, and perhaps this is why he was buried there. So that's the basic story surrounding the Ramchal and some of the books that he wrote. Let's just add one more important work that the Ramchal wrote, and that was the Kalach Pitrei Chochma, the 138 openings of wisdom. And in it, he summarizes the entire Kabbalistic system of all the worlds as they come down into the physical world from the moment that God creates existence, and he then begins to bring his light into the world to create up until this very physical world. So the Ramchal systemizes this once again in his brilliance. He puts it all together, and in 138 openings, 138 chapters, he brings down the whole system of Kabbalah. Anybody who wants to really get involved in the theoretical side of Kabbalah at the very least and get a start in things is well advised to study this work as well. And then, of course, the Ramchal wrote books on how to study Gemara. He wrote books on other Kabbalistic nature, etc., etc. There's a whole array of books, a library of books that one can purchase. And as I said before, there are other works that were never published. We never had access to them, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now we're coming to the Maamar HaIkarim. This is the essay on essentials. What we're going to learn about here are the most essential aspects of Torah that everybody needs to know. So, somebody's coming close to Torah and he says to himself, what do I need to know? Where do I begin? What is Torah all about? What is Judaism all about? The Ramchal puts it down in 10 chapters, the whole overview of what the Torah is about. Fascinating. We're going to learn about God. We're going to learn about angels. We're going to learn about rewards and punishment and Torah. We're going to learn about all sorts of parts of the Torah. And you're going to see, as he systemizes everything so perfectly, how everything of the Torah fits in its place. If you've gone through the Maamar HaIkarim, you will have at your fingertips the essential idea of what the Torah is. You want to know what the essence of Torah is? Read the Maamar HaIkarim. When you finish reading Maamar HaIkarim, don't forget, go back to Derech Hashem. Please read the Derech Hashem from beginning to end. And of course, if you want to work on yourself, get the Mesillat Yesharim, the Path of the Just of the Ramchal. Work through that. You can go through on my Shiurim as well. If you're enjoying it, let me know. And I will continue those Shiurim also, Be'ezrat Hashem, Bli Neder, so that others can see more into this wonderful work as well. So there's a lot to learn from the Ramchal. And now we're going to begin the work. The very first chapter, which is appropriate to begin a work like this, is known as Borei Yisparach, about the Creator, may he be blessed. So we're going to learn about Hashem. That's it. Who is Hashem? What is Hashem? Why is Hashem? Etc. The Ramchal is going to tell us in this chapter the most basic aspect, essential principle of all of Torah, and this is knowing that there is a God. Now, of course, if you don't know that there's a God, then everything else falls away. It's impossible to continue on one's progress in Torah because the whole of Torah is based on the fact that there is a God. Let's take a look at what he says. We're looking at, they put it here as paragraph bait because they called the heading paragraph aleph. So now we're really at paragraph bait. That you need to know, batchilas hakol, at the beginning of everything, who is sheyesh matzoy echad, that there is a first founding being, Adon kol hanimtzaot, and he is the master of all other beings, of everything that's to be found in existence. He is the master. Shemtziam ba'es sheratza, and he brought them into existence when he wanted to. When was that? I don't know. What does that mean? He brought it when he wanted to, as if, so to speak, he was thinking. The infinite being had been thinking for millions upon billions of years, and then one day he said, I will create a world. Well, that is only in our minds that we imagine the concept of what God did in creating the world, but God does not change, and we don't understand exactly what that means exactly. There was no concept of time. There was no concept of space. All of these things, of course, were created by the Creator. And from then onwards, we speak about the idea, so to speak, that God thought at a certain point in time, he's going to create creation. And Hashem, this Creator, in other words, sorry, I called him Hashem. He didn't say Hashem. And this being, this founder of everything, he keeps everything alive all the time that he wants to, which means to say that if you are listening to the Shiur, it is because the Creator is keeping us alive so that we are aware of existence, and he is bringing us into this existence every moment of this moment now. I'm giving the Shiur, and God is bringing me into existence to allow me to say these words. You are listening to the Shiur. God is bringing you into existence at this point in time, allowing you to listen to these words and read these words that we are reading together. Now God rules over these creations, Shlita Gemura, with a complete ruling. Hu ha'Eloah Yisbarach Shmo, and he is the God, may his name be blessed. Very first principle in the whole of Torah, in fact, the very first principle in the whole of life is to recognize that there is this creator. This is exactly what Abraham Avinu did at the tender age of 3. Some say later on in his life, depends how we understand what was happening. But the basic idea is that Abraham was confused about life. He would see the sun, and he said, the sun? Well, the sun must be God, because the sun brings light into the world. But he would notice that at nighttime the sun disappeared, the moon would come up. He would say maybe the moon is God because the moon took away from the sun, and then the sun would come up again. He would say maybe the sun is really stronger than the moon. You can imagine what he was going through. Well, after all of this, he realized, hold on, there's a pattern going on here. The sun, then the moon, the sun, and then the moon. There must surely be a creator who is turning the system around all the time. And he was able to understand that there is a creator. And therefore, he was the first of the people in this world to acknowledge the one God, and ultimately teach this over to his son and to his grandson and to the children afterwards, which eventually became the Jewish people. All of these people were the founding people of the Jewish people. And the reason is because they acknowledge the one God. Jewish or not, there is a mitzvah for everybody, a commandment to acknowledge the one God. It just depends to the degree that we're going to serve the one God. But everybody has to acknowledge it. So this ikar, this main essential point that we're learning about here, is essential for every single person. Jew, non-Jew, doesn't make a difference. There is one God in the world, and he brings things into existence every moment of the day. He rules over everything with a complete rulership, and that is God. Let us go on to Gimel, according to the paragraph structure in the Sefaria. Hamatzoi hazeh. So this founder, this it says here, being. Okay, we can use the expression being. This being, Yisborach, may he be blessed. Humatzoi shalem. He is a complete being. B'chol minei shlemut, in every type of completion possible. Which means to say, God, the creator, is absolute perfection. You say, what is perfection? God is perfection. We are not perfect. We stumble, we make mistakes, etc. But God, the creator, lacks nothing. He is absolute perfection. Ein bo shum chesaron klal v'ikar. He has no lack of anything whatsoever. God lacks nothing. He is absolute perfection. This is the rule and the most essential point that we need to know about who this creator God is. Eino taloi b'zulato is not dependent on anybody else. God does not require another God to keep him going, because if he did, then of course he wouldn't be God, and then that other being would be God. Well, whatever way you look at it, God is the highest, the greatest being over every other being in all of existence. When we get to that being who is absolute perfection, that is what we call God. So, and he is not affected, and he doesn't have any existence from any other being or any other thing altogether at all. Now, this being that we're speaking about, the creator of all creation, the God of all creation, the creator of everything around us, you, me, every single plant, animal, rock, building, doesn't make a difference. God is the creator of everything. And there is no beginning and no end to him. He did not begin, he will never end. So what does that mean? Well, we can get stuck into philosophy for the next 20 million years if you want to. Or alternatively, we can accept it on faith. God has no beginning. He simply existed for all eternity negative, backwards, and he exists for all eternity positive. Perush, what does this mean? That he does not have any type of a lack, and he doesn't come into any type of lacking. Let's just see, what does he say over here? He did not become after he was absent, and he will never come to. This doesn't make any sense. The point is, he's no lacking to him. Aval tamid haya v'tamid yihye. So there was never a lack. There is never a lack, but rather constantly he was, and he will always be. And there can never be a state of there being the lack of God. The essence of God is always present. There is never a concept of lack of God. That is the best way to say it. Wherever we are, at any point in time, whether we are in this world, whether we die and go to the next world, it makes no difference. God is present everywhere, at every point in time, and there is nothing that detracts from his lack in this world or all existence. He is the cause of all existences, and there is no other cause, but he himself, he brings all of existence about. God is the very bringer of existence. He is the being who brings all existence into place. Nothing around us. Look around your house. Look around outside. There is nothing there that does not exist without the power of this being bringing it into being right then and there in front of our eyes. Dalit. You also should know that this being, may he be blessed, he has no parts to him. He's not composed of various sections. He's not like some robot, and the robot has this part to him and that part to him. He is no human being. He has a head, he has an arm and leg, and he's not made up of anything. He is absolute, and even to say the word spiritual or spirituality is also incorrect. To call God spiritual is also incorrect. God created the spirituality. He created the physicality. Spirituality is far closer to God than physicality, although, of course, next to infinity, everything is all the same. But the principle is that God is not made up of components, and not extras. There's no plurality to him. B'shum in any way. Eliyahu pashut b'takris hapshitas, but rather he is the simple of all simplicity. And there isn't any matter in him of anything to do with physical bodily things and the things that occur to the body. For example, on my body, if I take a pin or I take a needle and I stick the pin or the needle into my body under normal circumstances, if I'm a normal person, I will feel the pain as it cuts through into the body. That is only if we have a body. If we don't have a body, the pin does nothing because there's nothing to deal with. God has no body, and he has no occurrence in his existence that is similar to what a body is. And he is lacking, he is negated from every type of boundary, any type of a barrier, from any type of association and any type of natural law. God is not bound by anything in the physical world. Nothing affects him. He is nothing. He is everything. He is infinite. Infinite backwards, infinite forwards. He is perfection. Hey, v'alakol, and on all of this, you should know something. That the whole truth of this matter and of his existence, of Hashem, of God, may he be blessed, in other words, Itbarach means he should be blessed, is not attainable at all. We can't really understand what this is, God. We don't understand him. There's nothing to speak about. He is unlike ourselves, and therefore we cannot grasp and understand who this being is. And he has no similarity. He has no similarity with any one of the matters of creations, or any one of the forms, of anything which is similar to what we would call similarity to any type of intelligence, of intellect, whatever it may be. There is nothing in existence that we can use as a comparison to understand who this God is. And there are no words and descriptions that are fitting for him. And fitting and appropriate for him in truth. There are no words that we can say and speak about and say this is who God is. We are speechless. In any language that we use, we cannot describe who God is. But rather, we speak about God using a type of expression of words through borrowing terms, copying terms. For example, if we want to say that God extends his kindness to us, and so we say he stretches out his arm towards us, all we are doing is using an expression that we're used to understand more about the interaction that God is having with us. God does not have an arm, but I need to speak about God in some way to relate to him that he gives me. Therefore, I use my expression. I borrow terms. Indeed, the Ramchal, as we said before, one of the finest, greatest Kabbalists around, one of the greatest mystics, somebody who understood what Kabbalah is, immersed in the experiential part of Kabbalah, interacting with angels, surely he understood what Kabbalah is. And he is telling us this idea because ultimately, when we begin to study the real Kabbalah, meaning the theoretical side. When I say real, I refer to only one aspect. Of course, there's meditation, there's the magic and the practical. These are all other different aspects of what the mystical tradition is all about. We're not speaking about that. I just want to go off the subject to the theoretical, because from the theoretical, we can move onwards to other aspects. Now, within the theoretical, for example, if one studies the Otzrot Chaim, if one studies the Eitz Chaim, the main works of the Arizal, really by Rabbi Chaim Vital, who compiled them, which are the teachings of the Arizal, but still Rabbi Chaim Vital actually put them into writing. So in a sense, they're really his work. And to say that if these are the words of the Arizal exactly, we can't really say, is this the words of the Arizal or Rabbi Chaim Vital? It doesn't make a difference though. What we need to know is the expressions that the Arizal or Reb Chaim Vital is using in the Eitz Chaim, in the Otzrot Chaim, where he discusses all sorts of occurrences between, let's say, Partsufim. He's describing how the Partsufim are working, how the worlds break down, and he uses all sorts of language that we are accustomed to. We must understand that none of this took place. This is non-existence. Please do not open up your Eitz Chaim and your Otzrot Chaim and start saying, well, there was this, God was filling everything, and then he removed himself from creation, whoosh, and then afterwards he drew in this light, whoosh, suddenly the light came in, and then afterwards the light spread out and it made the world of Atzilot, and Adam Kadmon, and then Atzilot came, and then whoosh, suddenly there was this world, and then all of a sudden there were the Sephirot that were coming in. The Sephirot looked like this, and then they broke, and the vessels broke and smashed down and went into this world, and so on and so forth. We're not talking about physical things at all. We are talking about highly ethereal, spiritual subjects. We can't understand what happens. So the Arizal, Chaim Vital, is telling us in words that we can understand so that we can kind of get a glimpse of who this God is. But the reality is everything that we're learning is non-existence. It's just poetic, so to speak, to help us understand the concept if we can grasp it later on by realizing exactly what the spiritual aspect mentioned in a physical way is actually talking about in that spiritual concept, going back to a non-existence. Because there is no existence. That's God. God is non-existence. He exists everywhere, and yet when you look around, it's as if he is nowhere. So at the same time as being everywhere, he's nowhere. It's like, where is he? He's like non-existent. And yet there he is everywhere. We cannot use physical things to describe who God is. But we want to grasp him in some way. Ridiculous statements. I want to grasp God. How do I grasp him? So what the Torah does is it uses with the permission of the Torah, with the permission of the Creator, so to speak. It uses physical words, anthropomorphism. It uses a physical word to describe a spiritual aspect. And when we can hopefully understand through the physical what's going on spiritually, we can push aside the whole physical, which is irrelevant, and immerse ourselves only in the spiritual, which is closer, of course, to the essential of where God is. Okay. Very good. So now the idea is, in order to understand what we need to understand all of these matters, since we don't have any words, so they're going to teach it over in matters that are natural or mukbalim and are based on boundaries. There are all sorts of, there have to be gevulim, there have to be certain boundaries. With regards to the boundaries of creations. You wouldn't be able to, it would be impossible to speak about any concept of spirituality if we didn't use these words. So we talk about the arm, we talk about the leg, we talk about the eyes. God sees creation. What do you mean he sees creation? He's got 2 eyes, 10 eyes, 20, an eye in every country, perhaps, or maybe 2, or 20, or 50. No, we're not talking about that. When we say he sees with his essence. He hears with his essence. He does not see with physical eyes. But the moment we begin to read, and it says God sees, all of a sudden, we want to picture this human being. He's got a long beard, and it's gray, and he's got a cloak on, and whatever figure you put into your head, God forbid. But people imagine these things, but this is not true. All that we're doing, says the Ramchal, is we're using these expressions only for the sake of allowing us to understand what was really happening, what is really happening. We let the ear attune itself so that it will be happy to hear an expression that the brain can relate to, even though this is not God at all. But were it not for the words that we use, it would be impossible to describe who this God is. Let's just speak about an idea. If I take an apple and I take another apple and I say to somebody, you see here, there are 2 apples. He agrees. You see, 1 apple plus 1 apple equals 2 apples. Great. He sees the apples. Give him avocados. Ask him about the avocados. Put the 1 avocado there. What you got? He's got an avocado pear. Fantastic. What you got? Another avocado pear. How many avocado pears you got? 2. Fantastic. I see it. But when you get to school in the beginning and you're 5 years old, they give you the apple and the avocado pear and the avocado pear. And they put them into groups. And then they say like this, they teach you mathematics. They say, look, if you've got 3 avocado pears in this group and 3 in this group, yes, how many do you have? 6. Because 3 plus 3 equals 6. But I'll teach you something else. Since there are 2 groups, if I say that there are 3 and times 2 groups, then isn't it true to say that both of those statements, the 3 plus the 3, is equal to the 3 times the 2, because there are 2 groups of 3 each, which is 6. Not so? Yes, the 5-year-old says, I understand what you're talking about. Suddenly, the 5-year-old is 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. The teacher takes away all the apples and the avocado pears. They say, I just want you to know something. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 times 2 equals 6. And that's all that there is to it. The child says, what are you talking about? If the child had never learned about the apples in the beginning, they wouldn't understand the concept of 3 times 2 equals 6. It's only from the beginning, since they saw the apples and the avocado pears, that they were able to relate in their minds the concept of what 3 times 2 equals 6 is all about. So when we learn the Torah, in the deepest parts of Torah, in which we can't describe God at all, because God has no description, in order to help us as juniors, as young children, trying to understand who this God is, what we do is we begin to use physical words, because there's no other way of dealing with it. But hopefully, if we mature in our learning, we extend ourselves beyond that, and eventually we understand that all of these terms are only metaphors. They are only descriptions of things which are relating to what's really happening behind the scenes in the spiritual world. We need to adapt ourselves and realize everything in the physical is irrelevant, and it is only there to help us so we can understand what the spiritual is all about. So the point is that the fact that we do have physical things is only there to help us understand who this mighty being, creator, God, really is. But this is an important point. in everything that we expound about, everything we speak about in the matter of God, that these descriptions and words that we relate to him, that are they related in a way of truth. But rather they are not true. They only come about in a way of borrowing. We are borrowing terms to understand a reality. We borrow the avocado pears and the apples to understand the reality of 3 + 3 = 6, and 3 × 2 also equals 6. Now that I have understood the concept of mathematics, I understand what a number is, and there are only 10 of them, and I understand the mathematical functions, plus, minus, division, multiplication. Since I understand that from having learnt it with physical things, I begin to adapt myself that I don't need physical things, because the concept itself is an existence that exists everywhere, and I no longer need physical things to describe it. My mind adapts itself automatically, and I understand what the concept is. I have no need whatsoever for the physical item. So too here we must understand, when we speak about God in any sense, it is all irrelevant. It has no basis to truth whatsoever. All of these things that we're speaking about are borrowed terms to help us understand who God is. And be very careful about this that we're speaking about. And that is chapter 1. That is the chapter dealing with who God is, what God is, the most important, essential concept of God. In chapter 2, we're going to be speaking about spiritual beings, Baruch Niyim. I hope that you'll join me for that shiur when I do it, Be'ezrat Hashem, Bli Neder. I would like to continue with the series also. And I hope you'll join me there. We're going to learn about the spiritual beings in existence. You see the flow of the Ramchal? He takes us first from the Ikarim, the most Ikar matter of God. Now he's going to bring us to the spiritual. After the spiritual, we're going to go to the physical. We're going to speak about the Torah and the rewards and the punishments and all different levels of Torah. That's what we're going to come to. But he takes us through in a very systematic manner. First God, then spirituality, then physicality. He's going to take us through all these levels. So I hope that you'll join me in these future shiurim. And of course, I hope that you've enjoyed this shiur. If you have got something out of it, please do like this video, subscribe to my channel, of course, if you haven't done so already and forgotten what I said at the beginning of the shiur. Sometimes people forget. Don't worry about it. Subscribe now, click on the like button, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you feel that you've enjoyed it enough, please do also put a comment below. Tell me what you've enjoyed, send your questions through. And of course, you can always just go to my website and you can contact me directly from my website by just simply sending me an email from there. And I'll be happy to be in touch with you and discuss all of these matters. Likewise, please feel free to see the other videos that I have on my channel. As I said before, you'll find videos on Derech Hashem, on Mesillat Yesharim of the Ramchal. You'll see videos of the Tanya, and a variety of other videos which are quite exciting. Let me know what you think of them. Tell me more about what interests you so that I can further progress with other videos as well. If you have enjoyed these videos and got something out of it and would like to give something back to me, please do come along and support me either by becoming a member on my main website, lovingkindness.co, or alternatively by visiting my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Eliyahu Shear. As you see the information below, hopefully, if I put it down over there as I edit it, then please go through there and you can offer a donation of any amount that you want to make a difference in my life, supporting me and helping me so that I can offer further videos in the future and even be in touch with you and offer my time, whether it's answering emails or speaking on a personal basis. I offer all of these services, and I hope that you will be in touch and make use of them. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I wish you everything of the best. Take care. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.